It's the same story on a different day. Washington falls 26-14 to Oregon to close out the regular season.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And today we've got so much to get into from this really, really disappointing loss that Washington suffered to the Oregon Ducks to close out the regular season. And just a quick reminder to all you readers out there, wherever you get this podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, please make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you never miss when we go live just like this. And if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help the show out a lot. Now, like I said, there's so much to get to from this game. And a little bit later on, we're going to talk about how Washington can win big games like this under Jedd Fisch, because it's very clear that the Huskies are not there yet. We're going to talk a little bit more about Dezmen Williams Jr. and the offense and their struggles in this game. But when we just look at the 5,000-foot view of this game, like it feels like we have sometimes up in the press box, the biggest thing for me is something that Garen Hatchett mentioned to us in the media after the game, and it's the slow starts. Yet again, I went back and did the math for a piece on Huskies Wire the other day. Washington has scored 24 points in the first quarter this season, and it's one of those things that is all going to, at the end of the day, reflect on one person. And that's Jedd Fisch. And I asked him about it after the game, and he said, yeah, it's one of those things where, we didn't start really hot on that first drive, and Dezmen Williams takes a sack on each of the first two drives that really puts Washington behind the sticks. But it's just another one of those examples where, especially in a game like this, you need to find a way to seize momentum early. And I think the defense did everything in its power at several different points in the game to keep the Huskies hanging around, because the offense was just not there. When you look at some of these early drives, it's not just the opening drive. And it was one of the things about Jedd's answer that I think could have necessarily been a little bit better. But you look at Washington's first 5 drives before the touchdown or right at the end of the half: 3 plays, 5 yards, 3 plays, -2 yards, 7 plays, 41 yards, 3 plays, 38 yards, 3 plays, 2 yards. It's not great. And there's just not a lot to look back on some of those drives and say, oh yeah, at least they showed promise here. At least they showed promise there, outside of the one that ended in the interception where Adam Mohammed was churning out yards. I want to talk about him later on, because he is such a big piece of what this team is going to be in the future. And I was so impressed with what I saw from him today, but that doesn't matter right now, because Washington lost this game. And this is one of those things where you look at the way that the offense played there. Again, this is why there's no other place to point the finger for some of these losses, but at Jedd Fisch, where Washington is 1-3 against ranked opponents now this season. You have the win over Illinois a little bit earlier on in the year, but outside of that, it just doesn't feel like Washington was able to rise to the occasion. And I feel like there are several things that you can point to. The number one just being the talent on this roster still needs to improve. And I like where that's going. That's something else we'll talk about a little bit later. But for the time being, this is what you're stuck with. And for Jedd Fisch, there is just so much that needs to go on over the course of this offseason in terms of figuring out what's next. Because you can look at any number of things. Just the inability to throw the ball early on in this game. While you look at the running game, you look at Adam Mohammed, he had 105 yards. He did that on 14 carries. That's one of those things where you should be able to look at that and say, yeah, all right, we need to find a way to give that guy some more touches early on in this game, because it's unfortunate. Jonah Coleman just still didn't look like he was completely healthy. It was nice to see him get out there and get a couple of carries, but this is one of those games where for the last couple of weeks, you've been able to rely so heavily on Adam Mohammed, and he's been tremendous. Like I said, 105 yards. That ties a career high that he set last week at UCLA. So you can look at just what Washington has been able to do on the ground over these last couple of weeks and say, all right, the offensive line was healthy enough. Drew Azzopardi was back, so John Mills was back at left guard. You were getting a push up front. It didn't look like last year at Oregon, where Jonah Coleman rushed for 3 yards in that game. It didn't look that way because you have more of the bodies, more of that physicality up front. Now, again, there's still work to do. I don't think that the pass protection was necessarily stellar today, but it did enough at times. And I want to talk about that when we get to Dezmen Williams, because these are all just kind of game flow issues. And those are things that stem back to Jedd Fisch, because there are so many just like particular plays that you can look at. I look a little bit earlier on where if Washington didn't score that touchdown, you can probably look at that 3rd and 8 play right before there and say, why are you throwing a fade ball right there? Why don't you just take a couple yards and see what's going on? But a lot of this just, or on that 4th down play, excuse me. But I feel like so much of this comes back to Jedd, because again, I just listed off some of those numbers where you had one drive that lasted longer than 3 plays before the touchdown drive in the first half. And those are things that are just flat out unacceptable, especially from an offense like this, where you're held under 300 total yards in this game. And again, this is something that pops up against all of the best defenses now that you face so far this season. And I want to throw Wisconsin's in with that too, because Wisconsin does have a legitimately good defense, where it's 6 points against Ohio State, 7 points against Michigan, 10 points against Wisconsin, 14 points against Oregon. That's one of those things where, yeah, the numbers are moving in the right direction, but in terms of like the flow of the game, there was a point, and I wrote about this in my story over on Huskies Wire, where I looked up and Washington 12 first downs, and I was like, could have fooled me. And that's just one of the really frustrating parts of this game, because again, like you can see that the talent is there at certain positions. Denzel Boston it didn't look like he was fully healthy either, but when Washington was able to get him the ball, it was very clear, hey, yeah, that's one of the best players on the field. You're doing a really nice job there. Even on defense, that really showed up. They held Kenyon Sadiq, who's going to be the first tight end off the board in the 2026 NFL draft, to 4 catches for 11 yards. That's a hell of a job. That's a really nice job on that side of the ball, but it's very clear that you still have a lot of improving to do on both sides. And it's something where we've talked a lot about the offensive line, especially on shows like this one, post-game shows after losses, where it's, hey, what's next for this group? What's next for that? And I feel like it's fair to wonder with what might be next for the offensive line moving forward. But this is one of those games where Drew Party didn't walk today on senior day, and I feel like that's a good sign that he's probably going to wind up coming back next season. And you look at what John Mills is able to do. I thought Zach Henning had a really nice day as well. I think Carver Willis has been really, really sturdy all season long. I look at that and I think, all right, this group is going to do nothing but get better, because we've seen John Mills now play a couple games at tackle. And all of this comes back to, at the end of the day, the physicality of the group, because it's not necessarily a, hey, let's look at last year's loss to Oregon and how it reflects on this year's loss. No, it has nothing to do with that at all. But in terms of what steps you've taken since that game, I would say that there are still steps forward, but it doesn't matter because it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. And it's something where you can look at the talent acquisition and some of the different things that are going on in that department. And you can say, all right, this is positive. That's positive. I like where this is going. I think that this can still continue to get better, but it's moving in the right direction. But right now, it's not being managed properly. There are so many different throws today and so many different play calls where it's, why is this the call in this situation? Why is this the call in that situation? And a lot of that does come into what Damon Williams is dealing with today, where there were times early on where, yeah, he got beat. That's the sack by Nasir Wyatt on the second drive. I was not a huge fan of that play call, where it's one of those ones where that's not a dude you want to leave unblocked like ever. And on a play that takes a long time to develop, where it's, the fake toss and you're going to end up running a naked bootleg off of that, that's way too much time to leave Nasir Wyatt as the unblocked guy, when it's, all right, I know like that player in particular, which we talked about with our good buddy Spencer McLaughlin on several shows this week, is that dude is just going to get after the quarterback. That is the only thing that he wants to do on a play like that. And leaving him as the unblocked defender, I don't know, doesn't seem like the best idea to me. And when those are the things that you're opening up the game with, all of a sudden you have to start pressing. You have to start pressing. You have to start pressing because you were down for the entirety of this contest, because Oregon kicked a field goal on their first drive. So you were trailing for pretty much the entire contest outside of your first drive. Those are things that can't happen in a game like this. And it all led into, one of the biggest stories of the day, which was, it was not the best day for Damon Williams. And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift. And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. The quality is exactly what you hope for. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. And the variety is underrated. Steaks, burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts. It's one of those gifts that truly fits anyone. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com, 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. And we've also got a message from our good friends over at Dewar. Check out this great shirt I wear. I'm so excited to talk to you about Dewar because they got great shirts like this. They got great jeans, and Dewar jeans are some of the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn in my life because they have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim, and made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. They're going to keep you cool and comfortable as temperature changes. And one of the best things about them is they feel stretchy without looking stretchy because Dewar combines classic jeanswear style with a kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It really is the best of both worlds, designed to look great and stay comfortable all day, no matter what you're doing. Simply put, Dewar makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. Trust me, once you try these, they'll be your go-to. Get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopdewar.com/LockedOnSeattle. You'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopdewar.com/LockedOnSeattle for 15% off. One more time, shopdewar.com/LockedOnSeattle. So as we just kind of dive into Dezmen Williams' performance, it was one of those days for him where from the first couple of drives, you could tell that things were a little bit off. And like I said, some of that just felt like it had a little bit to do with just pressing, where he was trying to make a play and holding on to the ball too long at several different points throughout this game. And that's one of those things where you have to give credit to Oregon secondary. They did a really nice job on the back end. And I want to talk about it later on. It's just the key to playing defense at any level of football. If you can get pressure with 4 after a couple of seconds and drop 7, you are going to win more often than not. And I think that was one of those things today that Washington just couldn't solve early. And when you were able to do that just before the half, when Dezmen Roebuck made that tremendous catch over the middle of the field to pick up Washington's first third down conversion of the day, those are the kinds of plays that, yeah, you need to make those in order to win big games like this one. But you also need to not only make those on a more consistent basis, you need to try to stay out of those 3rd and long scenarios, because before that 3rd and 8 play, Washington was averaging 12 yards to go on 3rd down. It was just straight up not pretty in that first half. I know, really hard hitting analysis there, but it wasn't even just Dezmen. It was the offense as a whole. And that's why I wanted to start with is talking about Jedd Fisch before I move into some of these other just nitpicky sort of things, and not even nitpicky, truly. They are bigger issues at this point in time. And it's one of those things with Dezmen where he is still a young quarterback. And today was one of those days that showed, all right, there is still a lot of growth that needs to happen over the course of the offseason. And I feel like you can take a lot away from this performance in terms of, yeah, he was pressing here. Yeah, he was pressing there. I think some of the positives were he was throwing the ball away a little bit more. He was able to get out and making a couple of nice plays with his legs at different points in time. But there was certainly more negative than positive to take away from it, because every single time he was sitting back there, no matter what the pocket looked like, it almost felt like he was expecting it to break down at a certain point. And there were a couple times where he chose to roll a certain direction instead of trying to step up and deliver the ball, or just step up and try to pick up a couple of yards that I didn't necessarily understand. And those are all teachable moments. Those are things that he can learn from and continue to grow on moving forward. And it's on Jedd Fisch and Jimmy Doherty to make sure that they do teach that effectively. And that when we see, even in the bowl game in a couple of weeks, whatever bowl game that might be, we need to see improvements in those sorts of areas. And sometimes it's just, that is a young quarterback looking to make a play. And I think throughout the season, his pocket presence has been solid. I think there's still a ways to go in that regard. And these are just, again, things that we're probably going to see from a young quarterback, but it just kind of resonated with the entire offense throughout the day. Like the first interception that Dezmen threw, that was something that Jedd and Dezmen both talked about after the game. And I was really curious because at the time when sitting up in there in the press box, it didn't look like the best decision, because it seemed like Jaden Kennedy read it the whole way, because what both Jedd and Dezmen said was, hey, we got Denzel Boston on a linebacker. That's a ball that, as Jedd said, should be out at least 9 out of 10 times in that direction, because we love that matchup. And I respect that. I think that certainly is the right decision to make there. But when you look at it and you see the safety also dropping over in that direction, he made a tremendous play on the ball. Shout out to Jaden Kennedy. That was a really nice play. But when you look at just kind of continuing to go through progressions, that was another thing that Dezmen talked about after the game, on not necessarily that play, but on several others. It's just, instead of trying to press the ball downfield, It's about taking the simple throw, taking the check down, and just letting your guys make a play. It's not a trust issue. It's just, hey, I trust you to go make a play, where we saw that from Adam Mohammed a couple of times in this game. And that was one of the few bright spots for the overall offense, in my opinion, was seeing Adam continue to work into the passing game. There was on both plays, it just seemed like he made at least one guy miss and was able to pick up 8, 9, 10 yards and pick up a first down. And it's really nice to see him continue to develop as one of those safety options, because Denzel Boston walked today. It's very clear that that guy is going to the NFL draft. You are not going to have him next season. So whatever the receiver core is going to look like next year, whether it's Dezmen Roebuck and Raiden Vinesbright as the focal points, whether you want to go out there and get a transfer guy, whether Rashid Williams is able to come back healthy and be that guy, whether someone steps up in training camp, whatever it might be, whatever that might look like, you need to find a way to understand that I have that guy who I trust and I love and I want to go to in every big time situation. But you also need to understand when you just need to make the safe play. And those are things that moving forward, I absolutely trust Dezmen Williams to do, because it's very clear that he's a really smart kid who is learning a lot on the fly and learning very, very quickly. And that's all well and good. But this is one of those games where it showed that, all right, Washington has yet to take that next step. They have yet to get over the hump. And I think that there's a lot to take away from this day, where you can just look back on it and say, all right, that's a teachable moment. That's a teachable moment. And next year with Dezmen as a junior, that play can't happen. That play can't happen. But again, today in this game, none of those things matter because you lost this game. And I look at that second interception that Dezmen threw. That's just another example of, all right, you need to take a deep shot at some point. You need to press downfield. And that was just one of those bad decisions where you can still find a way to take a check down at that point in time, get out of bounds. You get 8, 9, 10, 11 yards, whatever. The clock stops with the first down. You can get back up to the line and just keep that drive going. There are different things like that that I think are still just part of this process and have shown up in all of these losses. And that is such a big part of all of this too, is that Dezmen's biggest struggles have all come in these big games. And you can point to some of that maybe being, all right, the offensive line against Ohio State, it really didn't hold up, especially after Carver Willis went down. Dezmen got sacked 5 times after that. Like, those are certainly things that you can point to, but at a certain point, you also have to point a finger at the quarterback and say, that guy needs to be better. And to his credit, Dezmen after the game said, I know I need to be better. I know that these are things that I need to continue to work on. And that's great. And now it's about going out there and continuing to improve. And I look at what this offensive line is going to look like moving forward. Again, I don't think it played necessarily extremely poorly today. I don't think it was his best performance of the year, but considering the pass rush that Oregon has been able to bring to the table all year, I think that it performed well enough for you to find a way to win this game. And it gave Dezmen enough time, but there were times where he was just holding the ball and holding the ball and holding the ball. And like I said, Oregon secondary deserves credit for that because they did a very good job on the back end, and they have all year. The numbers reflect that. But with Dezmen and just with some of the different things that you do, sometimes it's not necessarily just taking a chance downfield. It's, all right, is this the safe play? Is that the safe play? And I don't feel like that was the case throughout this game. And those are the things that I want to see him continue to improve upon as he continues to develop, because there's just so much to love when watching Dezmen Williams on a week in, week out basis. And I'm sure that you can point some of that and just say, all right, well, you need to coach him up better with this. You need to coach him up better with that. And just as Dezmen's career continues to develop, he's got 2 more years of eligibility. I feel like these are all things that can be worked out somewhat easily. And it's not necessarily a matter of patience anymore. It's, all right, you've been able to take your licks. You were able to put together an 8-4 record in your first full year as a starter. There's a lot to like here, clearly, but now it's about doing it in these big games against these good teams. And that is so, so important. And that is such a big part of all of this, because you see the talent every time Dezmen steps on the field. It's, yeah, that guy is one of the best, one of the most athletic players on the field. He can make all the throws. He can make every play. Now it's just about, are you going to do it at the smart time? Are you going to be able to make the smart play at the right time? And when it comes to throwing the ball away, which is something this coaching staff has been asking him to do all year, I think he did a very good job of that today and not taking nearly as many sacks. I mean, it's hard to take as many as he did last year when he took 10 against Oregon, but I think that Dezmen is very clearly still on the right track and on the right progression. But this was a major speed bump. And we haven't seen one like this. I mean, the Wisconsin game, if you want to throw it out because of the weather, you can. I don't think you should. But between that one and the Michigan game, it's just this concerning trend of, when defenses are able to put a little bit of a better spy on him with a super athletic linebacker, whether it was Tatum Tuiota today, Mason Posa against Wisconsin, Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles against Ohio State, excuse me. In those kinds of games, you need to find other ways to help Dezmen continue to grow and continue to progress and continue to get the most out of him. And I don't think we've necessarily seen that either in some of these big games, because you do need to be able to rely on your quarterback to make some special plays, to win big games like that. And those are some of the moments that I think we might still be waiting for from Dezmen. And as everything else continues to develop around him too, I think we're going to see more of that. But right now, at this point in time, that's not the case. You had to be able to win this game with, making that corner, the deep corner route to Raiden Fines-Bright that got deflected. I think that was a really nice throw and a nice play by the DB as well. But you need to be able to find a way to make plays like that. And at several different points in this game, Dezmen showed you he's capable of that. Where the first touchdown to Denzel Boston, he took a lick on that play, and he delivered a really nice ball. And on the second one, Denzel ran a nice route. Dezmen was able to find a way to make a play and hold on long enough. But there were also moments in this game, like both of those low throws to Amari Evans that skipped off the turf, where the second one in particular, it seemed like he had a little bit more time to be able to set his feet a little and make a better throw. And on plays like that, those are the ones that in a game like this, you got to have. And today, Washington just did not have those plays. And so it just kind of poses the bigger question of, under Jedd Fisch, how are you going to win these big games? And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, moving forward, there's so much here, where Jedd Fisch got up at the podium after the game and talked a lot about reflecting on, the seniors and the young players that played this year. And he had a line in there about, we're going to be signing a lot of great players on Wednesday. There are a lot of players that want to be part of this program. I'll talk about it more on Monday, but Washington got a big time crystal ball today to flip 4-star wide receiver Jordan Clay from Baylor. That's one of those wins that you absolutely need to have. And having a guy like that, just that level of talent, is a really exciting thought, but that doesn't matter right now because he wouldn't be here till, at least January. I did see him on the sideline, though, decked out in all Husky gear. Very curious to see what might happen between now and Wednesday when the early signing period hits. So something to keep an eye on there. And the reason I wanted to lead with that is because this is one of those things where the biggest deficiency, in my opinion, that showed up today and Washington needs to continue to just close the gap with is continuing to add talent. Now, we saw, like I said a little bit earlier, we saw a big increase in terms of physicality this year from last year to this year. One of the things that Zach Durfee mentioned in terms of Washington's physicality was holding Oregon to 105 rushing yards. He said, we out-physicaled them at the line of scrimmage. We did that all day long. And I respect his answer. I think that Washington certainly did a tremendous job in that department. It didn't look anything like last year where, some of the pressures that Ryan Walters was able to throw at Dante Moore were pretty inventive. The Dylan Robinson sack was tremendously drawn up, in my opinion. And I reference something like that to say that the talent is there at some positions, but you need more and you need to continue getting better. A lot of these guys are going to be older moving forward, which I think is important in this. But when you talk about winning big games under Jedd Fisch, the talent is, if you are able to get more talent in the door, that's great. Especially if, JD Hill, 4-star defensive lineman, was on his official visit today. That is a tremendous add. It's great that you were able to do that. If you're able to get more pressure on opposing quarterbacks, I think that's such a big part of this and something I had written down that I wanted to make sure I spent a couple minutes on, because when you think about just defense and offense playing hand in hand, that is when you're at your best, when you have a strong pass rush and a strong defensive line that can just nullify opposing drives quickly. When you look at the time of possession today, I think that's such an important part of a game like today, where Oregon was on the field, or Oregon's offense, for 34 minutes and 58 seconds compared to 25:02 for the Huskies. That's one of those stats where you look at a game like this, a much stronger defensive line as it continues to grow is one of those things that can nullify that and get Oregon off the field a couple of different times, maybe a little bit earlier, because there were some plays in this game that were straight up unstoppable. I think of that first deep ball down the left sideline from Dante Moore to Jeremiah McClellan. That was a tremendous throw. Absolutely tremendous throw. You got to take your hat off to that one. But there were several other plays in this game where it's, maybe that can go Washington's way if you continue to upgrade. Maybe, this is one of those things that will go Washington's way if you're able to do this or that. Where I think about the offensive line in this game. I mentioned that I think it played a very solid game today, but you think about continuing to develop a guy like John Mills, a guy like Paki Finau, what we've seen from Champ Taulealea through his biggest action, I would say, of his true freshman year. You think about what those dudes are able to bring from a strength and physicality standpoint moving forward. All of a sudden, that looks a little bit better. Look what Adam Mohammed did for you today. Continuing to develop a guy like that, there's a lot to be excited about there. And I think that the talent is showing up. And as there continues to be more talent, it's about finding a way to rush the passer a little bit better, finding a way to be extremely disruptive along the defensive line, because that has just been so few and far between at different points of the season. And today was one of those examples where, in terms of strength and physicality and holding Oregon to a minimum on the ground, that's great. But when it's still, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, you're not able to get enough pressure on the quarterback to move him off his spot and pressure him. And again, a couple of times you were able to get enough to do a job, like, again, the Dylan Robinson blitz. But there's so much more of that that's needed to continue to compete with Oregon, with Ohio State, with Michigan. Jedd Fisch mentioned Indiana in that same light during his post-game press conference, rightfully so. You need to do so much more and to be able to compete with those guys. And it's where I'm really curious to see what the transfer portal looks like for Washington, especially at the defensive line. I'm curious to see if they might want to bring in, one of these veteran receivers to help round out this group. That's a position I'm really interested in. The talent influx is so important. And equally as important is finding ways to utilize it effectively. Because again, this is one of those games where when I look at everything that Washington could have done in this game, the penalties were not that bad today. You were able to find a way to make that work. I look at, again, the way the defense played for the majority of this game was really solid. It's really unfortunate that Tacario Davis wasn't out there, because maybe a guy like that with that kind of talent, maybe he's able to make one or two of those plays. Whatever happened on that last Jeremiah McClellan play, if Tacario Davis is able to get a hand in there, maybe you don't even get to the situation review, whatever it is you want to say. But I look at guys like that and it's really unfortunate that now he missed probably the two biggest games of Washington season, in the Ohio State game and the Oregon game. But I look at all the talent that Washington's been able to bring through the door, and I say it's a step in the right direction. I think about that a lot, because it's very clear that this coaching staff, this player personnel department knows what it needs to get better, but it's still not enough. And I think that you look at, again, because it all relates back to coaching at the end of the day. It all relates back to the coaching staff. It's why I've mentioned that one play, that Dylan Robinson play, several times already, because plays like that, designs like that, blitzes like that, show that Ryan Walters can absolutely unlock whatever it is you want to do on the defensive side of the ball. Look at the season Alex McLaughlin has had. He's a tremendous talent, and you are able to find a way to get the most out of him. You trust that on the defensive side of the ball. Zayjas Renesale started today. That dude is going to be such a huge player for Washington's defense moving forward. I can't wait to see what they want to do with a guy like that. I think the defense has all the pieces right now it needs on the back end to find a way to make it work. And now it's about finding a way to make the front four work, because if you can do that on the defensive side of the ball, the way it transitions over to the offensive side is you can't have nearly as many struggle games like you did today next season. That is just unacceptable. That is out of the question. You cannot have that happen. But if you are able to find a way to just, again, continue to upgrade this pass rush, continue to upgrade this defense, there is so much to like about the talent on the offensive side of the ball, about the way you were able to continue to develop this talent along the offensive line. I think about guys like 5-star offensive tackle Cody Green, and we've seen what John Mills has been able to do this season. Maybe you're able to get some more from Cody Green next year as well. And you see that the running game is there. This is where I really wanted to talk about Adam Mohammed. It's very clear that you have a special talent in a guy like Adam Mohammed. And again, It's really unfortunate we didn't see even a little bit more of him in a game like this. I don't know why that was the case, but you see that there is very clearly an exciting talent in what that kid brings to the table. And it's about finding ways to continue to utilize players like that effectively. And I don't think that Jedd Fisch has been able to do that on a consistent basis just yet in his Husky career. And next year is absolutely make or break. Today, I don't know if today was necessarily make or break, but this is one of those games that now this taste of not just the performance as a whole, but just the way the team looked and 14 points and all these other things, that is going to sit in the mouth of every single Husky fan throughout the offseason, as it should, rightfully so. And the more I look at a performance like this, the more it's Jedd Fisch needs to find a way to get out of his own way in terms of play calling and game flow issues. And like it or not, he is going to continue calling plays, but now it's on him to find ways to adapt. It's on him to find ways to make sure, all right, this hasn't been working. That hasn't been working. How can I change that? How can I continue to get better? And that's an inward reflective conversation that he needs to sit down and have with himself around some of those things, because as the talent gets better, maybe it'll mask a little bit more in that department, but it can only do so much. And in big games like this, his decisions matter. And those are the things that I want to continue to see this team work on, not just in the bowl game in a couple of weeks, but going into next season. Every single thing that Jedd Fisch wants to achieve at Washington, I feel like he's the guy with the key to unlock it. And right now, he's had trouble even fitting that key into the door. That's the thing that needs to continue to just develop and get better at moving forward, is Jedd Fisch finding a way to unlock and get the most out of his talent, because he loves to talk about, all right, well, now these guys, all these true freshmen, all these young players, they have so much more experience at the college level. I want to see, now next year, it's not, oh, we're getting these guys in from high school and hoping they can do, X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be. No, now that you have so much more experience, where he likes to say, oh, it seems like we're over 3,000 snaps played by true freshmen this season. While that might be the case, while you might be there, it is on the head coach, who is, the de facto offensive coordinator, because he is the play caller. It is on that guy to find a way to unlock it and get the most out of it. Because if some of these recruiting things happen, if you are able to get this Jordan Clay flip, if one or two other things go your way before signing day, we'll see what that might look like. If all that goes your way and you are able to end up with the best class in school history, you're out of excuses at that point in time. That's the bottom line, is you have all of the talent and all of the pieces that you need to help Washington take a step forward. And this year, it is very clear that they did. From 6-7 last year to 8-4 this year. That's great. That's a nice jump. But in this conference, with how much Washington has invested in Jedd Fisch in terms of coaches, in terms of NIL, in terms of his own salary, all of those things, that needs to continue to improve next season, because the talent should be at a place where there just are no more excuses. And I want to talk about that more over the course of the week, but that's all I got for you today. To all you everydayers out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. If you like everything we have to offer here on Locked On Huskies, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, we're there, we're everywhere. We're updating this channel for new content every single day. So please make sure you click that subscribe button, click that little bell so you don't miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please give us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.